So today we'll be talking about the events that happened in a Japanese immigration center this year. In March, a Sri Lankan woman died following mistreatment in one of Japan's centers after overstaying her visa. After footage was released, the family said she was treated like a dog and planned to sue the government. She is the 18th foreigner to die in detention in Japan. So today I'm here with Kosuke Oie, one of the attorneys representing the sisters of Wishma Sandamali, and unfortunately the sisters could not be here with us because of the language barrier. So Kosuke, let's get started. The first question I want to ask is what led to the event of the Wishma Sandamali sister being treated badly and eventually dying in a Japanese immigration center?
So thank you for having me today. The medical exact cause of the death is still unclear, even after the long investigation by the immigration agency. However, we know that she was detained for more than 6 months, and her application for provisional release from the detention center were rejected. And we know that during the long detention, her health condition got deteriorated, and she lost 20 kilograms in 6 months. And eventually she was so weak that she could not eat, could not respond to the staff calling her, but the staff would not call an ambulance until it was too late. So generally speaking, detainees in detention facilities in Japan have very limited chance to see a doctor. Primarily, it is not a medical worker or doctor, but detention guards who make a decision on health condition of detainees. And in the case of Wishma Sandamali, it was found out that the staff thought that she exaggerated her conditions in order to get provisional release.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the introduction, she was essentially detained for overstaying her visa. She went to the authorities for protection from her abusive relationship, and they detained her. So what is Japan's policy on immigration for such events to happen?
So it is not the first time that a victim of domestic violence was arrested and detained. It actually happens sometimes that the victim of domestic violence or even a victim of trafficking in persons gets arrested for not having a proper status of residence or visa. And in some cases, the law enforcement recognizes after the arrest that they are victims, and then they can be protected rather than prosecuted. But this practice is obviously a hindrance for the victims to seek help. I think that the authorities understand and protect the victims of domestic violence more than before, but it is still not enough. And on top of that, for the non-Japanese, they may have difficulty with their status of residence or with access to justice, so it could be even more difficult for them.
Yeah, so the guidelines, as I was doing my research, the guidelines for detaining domestic violence victims, are not in favor of the victims. So what is being done to ensure that these guidelines will be bettered in the future, or followed essentially in the future more?
Yeah, you're correct that the guidelines for domestic violence victims were not followed in this case, unfortunately. And lawyers and NGOs have already pointed out this problem. And the immigration agency also admits that the guidelines were not followed in Wishma's case, because the information that she claimed to be a victim was not shared within the authorities. Protection of victims of domestic violence is an important and basic matter which has nothing to do with the status of residence, and it is written like that in the guidelines. The guidelines were made because victims were not protected properly in the first place. Still, this time the authorities failed to process this basic and important fact, which is a serious problem.
Yeah, so it's very much a problem. This is the 18th foreigner to die in a Japanese detention center. So what is happening aside from them not getting medical attention, as you mentioned? What is happening behind closed doors to lead to such events that the public doesn't necessarily hear about?
Yeah, detention here in Japan can be very long because, first of all, the immigration authorities make it a rule to detain all foreign nationals without status of residence, which means release is an exception. And there's no judicial screening or legal upper limit on the duration of the detention. It all depends on the discretion of the authorities, so it is very difficult even for immigration lawyers like myself to predict when and under which conditions one can get a provisional release. And as we have been mentioning, even before Wishma's case happened, it was pointed out that the medical treatment system at the detention centers was not sufficient. The number of medical workers is too small, and systematically you don't get to see a doctor when you want to. That is what's happening behind the closed doors. The immigration agency says that they need to change attitudes and awareness of the staff. But I think it is not about the staff's attitudes. It is about the system of immigration that has to change.
Yeah, so you just said it's about the system. So what can be changed to the system to avoid this in the future?
I think that the detention should be minimum and done only when truly necessary in accordance with the international human rights standard, which is quite often be ignored here in Japan, unfortunately. The authorities should understand that the foreign nationals are human beings with human rights and dignity, even when they do not have status of residence.
Yeah, so let's get back to the Wishma sister. So what actions are being taken to seek justice for the sister that died?
Yes. So right now we are currently in the pre-trial proceedings to preserve evidences at the immigration agency. In this proceedings, the court has instructed the immigration agency to disclose the video footage of the detention facilities in which she died. Actually, the immigration agency would not disclose this video except for very limited parts until the court instructed to disclose. And also we are preparing for the next step, which would be a lawsuit against the government.
Yeah, so what are they asking for in this lawsuit, essentially, for to get justice for the sister?
Yeah. So because of the limitation of the law, we can only ask for the compensation. But essentially, of course, the family of the Wishma Sandamali would like to have justice. Would like to know what's really happened to their lovely daughter or sister, and then eventually they'd like that this kind of incident would not happen again in the future.
Yeah, so what changes are they seeking to have made, I guess, to Japan's immigration policies with the government, like suing the government and sort of looking for this not to happen anymore? What changes will have to be made for this to happen?
Yeah, so like I said, essentially this incident happened because of the detention. So detention system has to change, and like I said, detention should be minimum, and it should be in accordance with the international human rights standards. And the earlier this year, the government proposed an amendment of the immigration law, which would have given more power to the immigration authorities. But the proposal was abandoned because there was a great deal of opposition to it from the civil society. And part of the reason was that the Wishma's case coincided with this proposal. People tend to think that the problem of foreigners without status of residence as other people's affair, but it concerns ourselves too, because it implies how our own government deals with human rights issues. And I think it is very important that more people understand this problem and discuss.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll see if there's more after that. But is there anything that you would like to add about the events that took place with the Wishma and the immigration laws in Japan and detaining foreigners and all of that?
Like I said just now, I think, first of all, it is very important that people are aware of this problem of detention and the foreign nationals and start discussing about it. So for that, media play a very big part. And I am deeply grateful for this opportunity because medias in and outside Japan have been paying attention to this case a lot. Of course, it is because of the importance and the tragedy of the case, but also because, like I said, the case coincided with the proposal of amendment of the immigration law. So again, I really appreciate that I could speak in this occasion so that people have a chance to know about this problem and start to think about it.
Yes, well, I also appreciate you speaking with me, and we'll definitely be following the case as it goes on. I think that's all I have to ask. Is there anything you would like to add aside from that, or?
No, I really do thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, of course. I thank you so much as well.